Welcome back to the Genetic Genius podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of genetics and how it impacts our lives. I'm thrilled to introduce this week's guest, Aurore Martial, a transformational breathwork coach, hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and Kundalini Awakening practitioner. Aurore has had a remarkable journey, shedding her old skin as an investment banker and successful interior designer to pursue her passion for helping others raise their consciousness through breathwork. In this episode, we'll discuss the power of the breath to shift our state of mind and let go of limiting beliefs and past conditioning. Aurore will share her insights on how you can tap into your creativity, gifts, and abilities to see life clearer than ever before. Aurore's transformational breathwork journeys have the potential to change your life in just one session, and we'll explore how this process works. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by Aurore's incredible journey and the power of breathwork to transform your life. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Genetic Genius podcast. And joining me today as I welcome Aurore Martial, a transformational breathwork coach and expert in personal transformation, to discuss the power of the breath to let go of limiting beliefs and tap into inner creativity and abilities. Welcome, Aurore.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Great.
Yay, thank you. And you're tuning in from across the world today, as we can see for those of you watching YouTube. It's dark in her background. And where are you with us today?
So I am in Bali, where we've moved a couple of months ago. So it's been a long journey of transformation, which has led us to this beautiful island. So it's really part of the story, which is really beautiful.
Oh, great. Okay, good. We won't spoil it, but we will hear your whole beautiful story. So before we dive into talking a lot about breathwork today, I would love for you to talk about your story and kind of introduce yourself to our audience. It sounds like you've had quite a little journey to get you to Bali, where you are today. If you could introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Of course, with pleasure. As you can hear, I'm French. Actually, I'm half French and half Madagascan. So that's my mix. And so I grew up in France, and then I moved to London almost 20 years ago. And initially, I was working in investment banking for 10 years. So I think it's a long way that time now. And then I had an interior design studio for 5 years where I built everything from scratch, and it was working very well. And suddenly entered into this world of consciousness and expansion and all of that. And I think once you get into it, it's such a rabbit hole. You can't see the world in the same way, I think. So
right.
Yes. Yeah. So I think so basically it all started with me being maybe a bit tired of interior design. And I saw that surely there was more to do in life than doing people's houses, which is good in itself. But I think if you're here for a certain period on this planet, if you can impact more people, even better.
I love that.
Yeah, it was also random. So one day a friend of mine invited me to a retreat where it was all about like relaxing, doing qigong and Kundalini yoga and the kind of things where if I wasn't invited, I would not have stepped my foot inside. It was so remote from my world back then. And then during that weekend, which I really appreciated, it was really so different for me, and I really embraced it and I loved it, and it was good to be away from the family and also to learn music. So yeah, but also being away from the family. And then one of the nights was an ayahuasca ceremony, which was, yes, I know that you've done a plant medicine episode as well, which is really interesting. So I want to say there was really a before and an after for me. I don't know for other people, but like for me, it was quite enlightening. So it started there, I think. The shift in perception, I want to say. So I think it was the first time I understood what expanding consciousness meant. Before, I thought it was just like a woo thing that only would say. And it was just so interesting. It's if your life was in a tunnel since you were born, and suddenly like all the walls expanded to the point where you think, oh my God, so many possibilities, so many opportunities. Everything is possible and everything is at hand's reach. So I think at that point, I really reconsidered all areas of my life and our family's life, because I've got 2 kids and a husband. So it wasn't just me like going and wandering on this journey all around as well. Yes. So at the end of the day, I think that because I had so much clarity, it made every decision going forward extremely easy to make, and everything has unfolded with ease since as well. I knew that I had to stop the interior design thing. It was like, I knew like straight away, there was no doubt on it, but I didn't know what to do afterwards. But I knew that it would come. I also knew that our life in London was good. It was very good. It was what everybody wanted, but it was just easy. It wasn't challenging. It was too comfortable.
Right.
And it's easy to just stay in this life, in this little path and say, okay, I'm just going to do it because that's what we worked for. So we're not going to ruin everything overnight just because of a random idea. So once I got free of that thing of you don't have to do something because you started it. Just because you live in London doesn't mean that you have to stay there forever. Just because you do a job doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. Life is not linear. You can do U-turns from time to time, and sometimes it's good too. So I knew that living in London was probably not like it wasn't my dream, like it wasn't our dream anymore. And I think that also maybe since COVID, like I think a lot of people have shifted like lifestyle, like what seemed good before didn't really seem right afterwards. So what about you, if you had the same revelations?
Yes, of course.
So yes, we thought that maybe having a more outdoorsy life, trying to explore new continent, new culture for the kids, it would be great for us as well. It would be just a new challenge and starting everything from scratch, making new friends, working on something new, fresh. Which feel right. Yeah, so like London was out, interior design was out, and no, then we had to make it happen. Yeah, so then in the meantime, I discovered breathwork, and it was so incredible. My first experience with it was exhilarating. I was just laughing. I was so happy. It was just so blissful and orgasmic almost. So it was just like an explosion of wow, what is that? And I didn't even know I didn't even know it was a thing. It was during that weekend that I had it. And even though I was extremely scared to do the ayahuasca, I mean, I was like, I'm not touching that. I'm doing everything else except that. Yes, exactly. But before that, they did like some breath work, and I was like, oh my god, is that the beginning? And we get there without anything? Give it to me. I want to try it. Yes, but it was really the peak of the experience. And then I thought, I mean, oh, maybe I can just practice it, and then by practicing it, I thought maybe I can actually teach it and discover it to other people. And when I said that to my husband, he said I totally lost it.
He's like, wait, what? This isn't anything what you were doing before, right?
Because I don't know, like, it's kind of, what do you mean, like breathing? Breathing, like I breathe every day. I don't need a teacher for that.
But you're not breathing the right way.
Exactly, that's it. You know, like you can release so much by doing it, and then afterwards, when he tried it, he said, "Okay, now I get it." Yes, luckily. So, yes. So eventually, I went into that. I studied hypnotherapy, like many other modalities, which I think really go together in sessions with people when it comes to healing and let it go of trapped emotions, trapped like things in the body, etc. It works so well. And then I started working with energy as well, which is another layer in this whole cake. And it's Kundalini activation, which is absolutely mesmerizing as well in so many ways. And so that's the story.
That's great. That's quite the journey. And I think that the pieces when when we were listening to your story that was so profound was about how you just let yourself like guided in the flow of breath, right? Okay, I'm going to be guided this way and this way. And as your story is continuing to develop, you can really see that you listen and let yourself be guided, which I think is what you mentioned too. A lot of people have found through the transition of COVID. And also they're continuing to see that within themselves. Okay, I was doing this. I want to do something completely different. Or how can I change things up? And moving into a whole another area, of course, I'm sure has stimulated a lot of things in your growth.
Yes. And as you say, you're so right. It's just about listening, because once you can listen, like all the answers are just in front of you. It's all there. And I think there is also a big element of trusting as well, because even though you don't know the end road, and I don't know it, I'm just going one step at a time, and every step I'm thinking it's the right thing, it feels right, so I just go along. But yes, it's really about trusting the process and having a bit of faith.
Right, yes, faith and trust.
I mean, like, I'm so happy. I'm happy on so many levels that we did that.
That's amazing, Aurora. And let's talk about breath work in general, because I think It's like you were mentioning about your husband. Oh, why do I need a coach for breath work or for breathing? But so what exactly is transformational breath work? And how does it differ from, or is it the same from other types of breath work practices? Because there are different types, like maybe just pranayama in yoga format, right? So what is like the actual piece of transformational breath work?
Yes. Okay, where do I start? Okay. So maybe I can just tell you a little bit how a session works. So during the session, there is intense music. So the music goes a bit on a journey as well. So it starts slow and then it peaks and then it goes down and we finish by relaxation. What we're doing compared to, I think there are a lot of modalities. There is Wim Hof and holotropic. I think if anything, maybe you can put it along with the holotropic style, except it's short. Holotropic can last for hours and hours. This one is like 1 hour and you've got the same effect. So that's something I'm pretty confident with. It's an activating form of breathing. So you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. You're not just going, calming and almost falling asleep straight away, at least. So the way we breathe is like conscious connected breathing. And it's like a good 45 minutes it's very intense. So it's not the kind of thing where you're just doing nothing. It's intense.
Taking a nap, right?
Yes, very intense.
Yes.
And that's what I like about it. There is no way I could do a boring type of breathing. I would fall asleep. This one is great. It's intense. It really goes inside. It gets like the essence of you. You really go inside. And when you breathe in that way, slowly, like it takes about 15 minutes, but you just like unpeel all the layers of your prefrontal cortex. So what happens is it's called transient hyperfrontality. So your monkey mind is slowing down. And it's hard because, of course, it's going to resist. And of course, it's going to tell you, oh, come on, I don't want to go there. It's too dangerous. I just want to stay comfortable. So these first 15 minutes are just so uncomfortable. And like 100 times you want to stop. 100 times you want to say, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. One, it's scary. Two, you don't know what you're going to find. You have no idea what you're going to find. So on many levels, it's a very uncertain journey. If you do it on your own without the help of anyone, etc. If you're accompanied, of course, it's going to end well. You're not on your own. It's totally safe. So you basically, so the music goes like this, it peaks, it's very intense. And the whole time I'm coaching. So we go through first, like you really have to go like 15 minutes. Okay. You go 5 songs. And then after 5 songs, that's it. You're there. You're high. You're really high. And which is a beautiful feeling. And that's what people report every time. They're like, sometimes I say it's like I felt like I was levitating on the floor. I didn't feel my arms anymore. I didn't feel my body, or I never felt so in touch with my body. So physically, it is a very interesting experience. But also, what happens is that as you dig deeper and deeper, a few things can happen. Oh yeah, if you want to start by physically, what happens? Many times people have something called tetany, so their hands are clamped like this, which can be scary. Once again, it's totally normal, and of course, you're not going to be stuck like this. After an hour, you're going to be absolutely fine, and you go back to your normal life, and you can use your fingers. So that's like the physical aspect is like it's tough at the beginning. You can get like hands and feet, but also like emotionally, because you breathe so much, and you just bring all that energy in your body from your head to your toes. You are going to bring up emotions. Emotions are going to surface, and you just want them to surface. You don't want to repress them. You just want to embrace them, look at them with a clear mind, just like no judgment, and see it exactly for what it is. So all your limiting beliefs, all your programs from when you were a kid, all the things that might have nothing to do with the person that you are today, will just come in front of you, and you will just be aware of it. And once you're aware of things, it changes everything. You know what to look for, you know what to change, you know what to shift, you know how to perceive things with a different light. So that's really what happens. And spiritually, I think you can feel like very enlightened afterwards. My God, like before I was walking without glasses, now I finally have glasses. I know what to change.
Right. Yes.
So you also go through a lot of traumas, like pain might surface, but the most important is just to let it out, because once it's out, that's it. Otherwise, it's just stuck in so many places in your body, and it's like a river with all these flows, or maybe a very dirty pipe where the water doesn't really flow anymore. So emotions are like energy in motion. So when you have all this energy going through your body, you just push through everything. And maybe it doesn't take just one breathwork session. It might take a few, but eventually you get there.
That's great, Aurora. So it sounds like the kind of that main difference, or in maybe a few differences. One is the intensity is a lot different that you described than basically being in this parasympathetic mode and really relaxing, but you're bringing your breath work into this other place. And the music, I think, is different too. Like sometimes that's a different piece that I haven't experienced myself with doing other breath work, which is very interesting. And what was the training like that you did when you were learning how to become a teacher to teach others? Did you have to go through several rounds and rounds of breath work? I'm sure it must have been intense.
Oh yeah, sorry. And also now that I think about it, during the session, like at the peak when it's really high, also people to scream it out, to just let it out, and a couple of times. And I think the first time, especially if it's a group session, people are a bit like self-conscious.
Cover their mouth.
Just like, they just take a pillow and they feel shy.
Right.
But then second one, third one, boom, everybody's out, and it just feels so right, because you never get the chance to scream on top of your lungs in your life. It just doesn't happen unless you have kids.
It's very primal to be coming back to that kind of like native aspects within our DNA and within ourselves, just like that primal nature that we suppress because of society. Oh, I don't want to feel judged, or I don't want to feel out of the norm. But I think that's our true nature, to be running through the jungle and from tree to tree.
That's exactly right. You just want to go to that root. You just want to go really deep. And if you want to go deep, you've got to breathe deep. So you really have to give everything you have, and you really need to scream everything you have. And then you feel better.
Letting
it's just
it out.
like an hour, and it's a very safe container. So at the end, like, you just go back to normal life. But in that hour, that's an hour just for you, and you work on yourself.
Yes, so true. To have that time. And a lot of people don't even take that time for themselves during a day or a week or a month or a year, just for them. You mentioned about the state of mind, about letting go of limiting beliefs and past conditioning. It sounds like that's a kind of like a big piece of the transformational breath work. Do people seek you out for that particular aspect? I'm quote unquote stuck. I don't really like to use the word stuck, but I know that it can be a way for people to describe things. But how do you use then the transformational breath work with a client, like you were talking about, as a way to let go? Like maybe you can give an example. Someone comes in with an example of something they're trying to shift and change. And then how does the breath work then help them to move through that particular change, let it go, excuse me, and release that past conditioning that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, so first, I think that would be more in the case of either an individual session where there is like a consultation before, exactly like when you go and see a hypnotherapist, he's not going to start like hypnotizing you without knowing the background. Of course, you want to know the background, like you need a bit of an idea of where you're going. And so, for instance, this morning I saw a lady, and what she was saying is that she really struggles to access her emotions. She really struggles to look inside, and she always feels as if she was stuck in a box of metal, and she really can't. Then we had a session, and what she said is that because she was breathing all the time, and also because I knew what to focus on, and it was clear that she also, because of the energy, I could feel that she had a lot of things that were stuck in her lower belly. So like fear and anxiety and all of that. That's exactly what's told. So like you can feel it straight away. And also like the throat. So you can tell like all the, like whatever you want to say, just doesn't go through. And she just physically like holding her throat like the whole time, as if she wanted to let it out. And so she really struggled, but at the end she still screamed. She felt better. But at the end she was like, you know what, I think I need to have another one. Because now I know, because of course she was scared maybe, or she felt like very self-conscious, which is also something like when you're in a one-to-one situation, you feel more conscious, and in a group setting, you feel like, all right, you can hear everybody breathing around you. It's fine. You can you can just go with the flow. On a one-to-one, I think it's a bit different, especially if you're already feeling self-conscious from the start. But I think she's coming on Thursday for a group session, and she will be able to release a bit more, I think.
That's great. And you mentioned the individual and the group sessions. Can that be done like in this type of setting, in a virtual setting? Do you do remote work? You don't have to be like in person to experience.
No, absolutely not. The most important is that can have a screen to make sure that people are breathing, because sometimes when you breathe so much, it's easy to stop breathing for a little while, which is absolutely fine because you have so much oxygen, like you can hold your breath for 3-4 minutes, no problem at all. It's just to nudge people, also to push them, and also to see if maybe like they're crying relentlessly, to feel that they're not on their own. Or that type of thing, just emotional support.
That's great. Yeah, because it sounds like the work is really powerful. So you would want to have that connection. And I think as we talked about earlier with COVID, we're realizing how much more we can have this global reach of healing, right? Where it's like, you don't have to be, of course, the touch and being in that person with that person is very unique. But I think now we're discovering like how much can be exchanged through the energetic, like vibration of a screen, right? We're connecting, you're halfway across the world, and we can still see each other, still feel each other's energy. And so I think that was a place that's one of the most positive things. There's a lot of positive things that came through with it, but I think that is definitely people feeling comfortable about being on video and all of that.
That's so right.
Yes.
And as you say, like energy just doesn't know borders. So it's everywhere. We can feel it everywhere.
Yes, totally. So if we're using breath work to then shift something we're trying to let go, maybe that's a limiting belief or something that's been holding us back. And that could be sounds like from what you're saying, could be an emotional piece or physical piece. It could be, or spiritual. Anything can be used in that breath work, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Usually it's a lot for trauma, and I think we all have them to a certain extent. Like for some people, it's like big traumas, but we all have stuff that maybe we totally suppress and can't even remember, as well as things that you were told as a child and maybe you haven't heard for 20 years, but still because you heard it a couple of times, it stayed. You're not conscious of it, but it's there. And if you can access it and understand, oh, that's why I always feel so guilty, or that's why I feel so shame, like most of the time, or that's why that's why I don't have any ambition. Like all these questions that you might wonder, you do have the answers inside of you.
Yes, we do. That's for sure. We just have to tune in.
Yes,
Yeah. And how can we use then the transformation breathwork as a way to tap into the creative sides of ourselves? So if we're talking about releasing all of this quote unquote crap we don't want to have to deal with, how do we tap into the juicy good stuff, the positivity?
Oh my God, I love it. Absolutely. Yes, sorry. Actually, I didn't go like the full way. So when the first half of the journey, when we climb, the first part is usually about releasing like negative things, letting go and feeling lighter and that kind of things. But then like the second part is all about positivity. It's like you've got a garden, just pulling out all the bad weeds, like slowly, one after the other, all that anxiety, all that stress, all these fears, all this guilt, the shame, you name it, you just remove it. And then you just want to plant a bunch of creativity, like confidence and resilience and courage and grace and gratitude. You want to bring that in, and you want to be aware of all the beauty that you have inside of you and around of you. And once again, you just want to see it. And once you see it, you wake up a different person.
Yes. And I really like the way that the transformational breathwork has both sides, right? So it has the release side, and then kind of like you're refilling that cup, which you've drained out. Right? You don't want to just like empty yourself out and then to feel so depleted. And I think that's an important part of the work for sure. And one of the things you mentioned in the beginning was the Kundalini, and I'd love for us to talk about that because I think that's from that yogic philosophy. People maybe have heard, if the listeners tuning in now might have heard that word before, but what's Kundalini, like Kundalini Awakening, Kundalini, what's the energy behind that philosophy? And then how do you use it in a breathwork practice to really help the body to then transform?
Sure. It's not Kundalini Yoga. What I do, it's very different because Kundalini Yoga is a lot about breathing and doing a bit of yoga, etc. Like this one is, in practice, it has nothing to do. Philosophy, of course, it's all about aligning the energy centers and that kind of things. But so the Kundalini energy is often represented as a snake that's coiled at the base of the spine. And as like a sleepy snake, like it's a feminine energy that we all have, men and women, that's most of the time very dormant. So what you want is just wake it. And when you have a Kundalini awakening, that's a very scary thing. I personally did not have one, but like people who would have it would say it's super scary. Like you just wake up and then boom, like it's like your head is exploding and you have all this light and like everything, like you're very ungrounded for a long period of time and people can feel crazy and all of that. So that's usually it happens either very spontaneously or after a trauma, or it can happen for various reasons, or if you meditate a lot, or if you do a lot of breath work, like all of these things help towards the awakening. But that's not what I'm doing. like working on the side of it in a very safe way to activate it. Slowly just going like lighting the rocket and off you go. It sounds really smart thing to do. So you have this snake as a base of your spine, and what you want to do is just raise it. And as it raises through all your energy centers, it just wakes you up, and like it raises your energy and just raises all your vibration, and you just operate at a different level. It's like expanding your consciousness. It's the same thing. It's like expanding your consciousness. It's like feeling one with the rest of the world, like that kind of thing. That feeling of oneness. That's if you want, that's the ultimate goal. That's where you want to go. Obviously, it doesn't happen in one session. So for some people, it might, but for most people, it's like layer after layer. So some people are already like very flowing, and you activate them, and then boom, like they're moving in all directions. And other people would be like very still and not do much. They would have maybe like they might feel a little bit of energy in their hand, or like electricity, or that kind of things moving. So that's what everybody would experience it in a different ways. For some people, it would be like very much in their head. They would be like flying through space. Other people, it would be like very physical. And you tend to basically like move in all directions as if like your energy was just moving like spontaneously. And these body movements are uncontrollable. So it's like very spontaneous, and it's not the type of movement that you would have in a normal setting. It's usually people would be lying down. So during the session, you would be lying down. And as we walk through the energy, we just raise. It's like basically I'm plugged to the energy, and I'm just a vessel for it, like for the people. So usually I don't even need to touch them. Just the fact that it is in the room, you would see the people starting to move, or starting to shake, or starting to cry, or starting to laugh. Everybody would have a very different thing. But it's all about clearing the system, clearing the blockage. It's very similar in terms of effect to the breath work.
That makes total sense. So it's like an energy system in the body through the spine that's being activated, and through that kind of like the base of the spine, through those base chakras or base energy centers. And then that movement, when it's activated, then can be moving throughout the body, this kind of like spontaneous way, right? As it's being activated. And of course, that's different, like you said, through every person, because every person has a different way of expression. Yeah. And so is that part of the music that you use during a session when you're doing the Kundalini Awakening sessions? Do you use music with that piece?
Yes, yeah, of course. So the frame of a session is that people will be lying down. There will be some music playing, same thing, like building up and then slowing down at the end, just to finish in a nice meditation. Does it really? It works without the music. I've done it without the music as well. So you can totally do it without, and it works exactly the same. But I think that the music is also to help people like get out of their head. So it's listening to the music, and it's intense, it's epic music. So it's very, oh my God, you're the king of the world. Type of thing, and which feels good. Or sometimes it's like a darker music, which is going to bring them to like a darker place. Like it's very different. Yeah, I think the playlist plays a role. I don't think it plays everything, but maybe it's like half of it.
And you create the music yourself? Is it music that you've designed and created, or is it music that comes with the kind of like the teachings and the learning part?
No, I make my playlist every time.
That's fun.
And, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's so boring. If you do the same thing, it's like,
right.
No.
You have to, brain wants to have a change for sure.
Yes, and if people coming like time after time, it's boring for them as well. It's boring for me. It's boring for them. It's interesting when it's a different thing every time.
Yes. And one thing you mentioned, just thinking about it a while ago in our conversation, is you talked about the breath work really affecting the frontal lobe, the frontal part of the brain. And I was thinking about, we're having this place of time right now where people are in this sympathetic mode, really not breathing very well. And then we're also seeing at the same point in time, dementia and the change in memory. And that's the whole piece of our brain there that is affected. So I was just curious. I'm like, oh, what your thoughts were about breath work and the way that our brain is affected, and the energy that's moving through the brain, the oxygen, and all of those pieces.
Yeah, and I never really looked at it from the Alzheimer or memory angle. It's so interesting, actually. It's definitely something to explore, to see if you lower down that area and maybe you speak in a certain way, or you I don't know, maybe try to recover memories from before or exact kind of things. I have no idea what would happen, but it would be really interesting to try.
Yes, totally. I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yes,
Yes, because
definitely.
we're seeing so many pieces where people's memory is shifting and changing. And I think that when I was in medical school and working with the cadavers in the cadaver lab and seeing that part of the brain that was affected, it's almost like the brain like shrinks inside the skull. It looks very odd compared to a usual brain. So I was like, it must be connected to blood circulation, of course, but also they say that it's the change in the neurons, this particular almost like toxins, but I think it has a lot to do, of course, with breath. It has to have a way that we're breathing.
So you're saying that when you open the skull of people with Alzheimer, you could tell the difference with someone who didn't have Alzheimer.
Oh yeah, you totally can. Yes. So when I was working in the cadaver lab with the cadavers, you can see look, the brain looks completely different. Yeah. So it's not just like the emotional part of memory, but the brain actually looks smaller. Like the brain, you can see it kind of like shrinks back into the skull from the damage. That's an extreme Alzheimer's case. So I don't know if you would see that same in just like early signs of dementia, but the brain definitely shifts. I think there should be some more study done on breath work
Yes.
and using it with cognition and memory. I think it would be really amazing work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can access so much by doing it. So surely there is something to uncover there.
Yes, food for thought, everyone out there. Food for thought. Yes. So you mentioned earlier Aurora, about the number of sessions. So how does that work with an individual? Let's focus on kind of like the individual piece instead of the group. Is it completely different for every person? Like one session can be done and they're like, okay, I'm finished. Or is it better for someone do you recommend doing maybe start out with a 3-session package so that they're really feeling that shift in the body? Or is it all just completely individual?
I think that there is a rule of thumb that you should not do it more than once a week.
Once a week. Okay.
No, I mean, but just because it's so intense, and also you need time to process it. You need time to integrate what you saw, what you uncovered, and just sit with it for a little bit of time. That's one part. But also because you breathe in such an intense way for an hour, you don't want to do it too often as well. So once a week is fine. Like your body's got time to recover, you have time to personally process it, then you can do it again. I think I want to say 5 sessions would be like a minimum if you really want to unfold all the different layers. But then you can do it frequently afterwards, like once a month. So whenever you feel this, it's not like you need to wash every day. Like it's really whenever you feel the call, and it's very personal to everybody. Like if let's say that you had a very traumatic event in your life and you did that, and then you maybe remember like parts when it's even more painful, and just maybe you don't want to go there like straight away. Maybe you want to wait a month. It's totally fine too. It's really whenever you feel like you're ready, and I think that I don't think it's going to give you more than what you're ready to bear anyway. Many modalities in that style.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And what can you do the practice like yourself, since you're a trained practitioner? Can you do your own session, do your own practice, or do you have to work with a practitioner when you're doing a session?
Yeah, so I listen to recordings, my teacher, so if I want to do it myself. So I've got a set of his recordings because it seems to listen to my voice. If I do it forever, it's fine. I think it's fine for you to listen to my voice despite my French accent. But yes, it's such a good exercise to get clarity. I think like you have such laser sharp clarity afterwards that you know what to do. Let's say that you were stuck on a problem, whether it's at work or you were like, maybe, I don't know, you're writing a book when you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do next. It's going to be clear. You might have an idea popping up. Or if you're hesitating between two things, you do it and then boom, like the answer is in front of your eyes. It's super clear. That's what you've got to do. So whenever I'm like stuck on an area or I'm not too sure what to do, or I just need like this extra creativity, because I do need some creativity as well if I do because every session is different. So I want to do something different most of the time. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, you know what? I think I've exhausted everything. Then I do it and boom, like something pops out. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I can do that now. Or
yes. Yeah, that makes total sense. To recharge, you have to recharge your battery because you're doing healing work too, not only a creativity piece, but
so draining.
Yeah. And that's true. I think we're also seeing, we were mentioning kind of like the change of health and care moving forward. I think we're going to see that piece changing a lot with people moving forward, is that healers are becoming more acknowledged, right? More present forward in the place of health medicine or medicine in general. And then also like the acknowledgement of, hey, this person needs to be recharged. Can't just be like this battery that's totally sucked dry. And so I think that we're going to see both of those shift as healing becomes more the forefront of medicine, like, because it's not that way right now.
But no, I think it is becoming more, I think it's becoming a lot more holistic compared to a couple of years ago, because one, okay, maybe it's a Bali thing as well, where people are a bit more embraced a bit more, like taking both aspects. But even in London, when I lived there was this shift of people, like, for instance, the lady I trained for Kundalini, she's a psychologist and a hypnotherapist. She already takes both sides of the talking way of healing and the hypnotherapy, which is like a different way, where you access the subconscious directly. Very interesting to combine both. With the energy work, once again, you go on another level and you heal on another level, and whatever comes there, you can talk about it afterwards. Or like a nutritionist who also works like, okay, you have gut problem, maybe we need to heal your mind as well, and working on these both aspects, which I think 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, wasn't so mainstream. It wasn't that common to see someone to go and see a doctor and they would say, okay, you have like a coronary issue. Is there something else happening in your life, for instance? Like maybe like you have a heartache or something in your bowel. Could it be fear, anxiety, or if it's got something in your lungs, could it be grief? Because it's all linked to, and there are specific places of the body where it's linked. It happens so often, you just cannot ignore it.
Yeah, so true. Yes, the emotional, physical, and spiritual body are so connected. We can't separate them, which I think that's the old thought of medicine has really separated. Here's a physical ailment. This is the only thing that we know to help that. We're like, well, that's not true. That's definitely not true. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are the pieces that you mentioned?
So interesting, actually, because like the number of stuff that we learn from that, it's like a Bible for holistic healing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the genetic genius is so fun for that, because that was one of the reasons I really wanted to create it as a way for people all over the world to be able to learn about different styles of healing like you're doing, and also how they can really wake up their body, right? It's not, and learn how to take care of themselves, learn about different things that are going on. And because there's so many things happening on this planet, and it's just an endless, incredible healers and doctors and people wanting and searching for things to help them feel better, for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing that you mentioned too earlier was about hypnotherapy. And I know one thing that you practice is NLP. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's an area that our listeners really would be interested in hearing about, learning about what it is and how you use that in conjunction with the breath therapy sessions.
When you do hypnotherapy, like, there are some triggers that the way you talk during a hypnotherapy session is not really the way that you would talk in a normal session. So sometimes you would try to confuse the mind a little bit, speak very fast, or speak sentences that don't really make sense, so that you bypass that monkey brain, and that is, oh my God, it's too complicated. You know what? I give up. Boom, like you go inside. So that's one thing. When you do NLP, you work with words as well, because like when I speak during the session, so I speak for an hour pretty much nonstop, I'd use a little bit of that hypnotherapy language. Also, I use the techniques of visualizations and like that things that really help you get out of your head and boom, like you're somewhere else. NLP, I think, is different in a way that just by using the language and turning it in a very, let's say, only positive way, so that you only see like the beauty in the world, for instance, whatever it would be the goal, you want to use a language that would evoke like creativity, for instance. And if you mix it with hypnotherapy and with breathwork, that you get so deep into it. You get so deep into, I really want to grow, and then you see the flowers and everything opens. Like you want to use that language of, oh my God, everything is opening, everything is blossoming. And it just helps so much during the session, using that type of language, just appropriate words that would trigger certain emotions, that would break certain patterns, and so on. So that's really a way of entwining everything together.
Yeah. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Is that what it stands for? And so that's a specific way of like pattern of communication. Is that understanding, as a way to help to unlock specific areas of the brain through like reprogramming? Yeah.
Because like obviously, like you have some psychologists would just do NLP like in their talking sessions, and I think it's like a whole new level. I don't go there. what I do is that I just took the concept of hypnotherapy, just like to do my sessions, and the main concepts of NLP to have more powerful impact with the world.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So you use it as a tool to enhance the session, to really help a person to
That's
go
exactly it.
deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, the same ways that I use in the recorded sessions, for instance, I use binaural beats. I just use a lot, I just work a lot with the frequencies as well. So just layer several frequencies, like just to get into a certain brainwaves, like theta brainwaves, or like depending on the moment of the session, if it's the beginning, the end, etc. So just so that the brain tunes to certain frequencies, so that they're more open to suggestions, for instance.
That makes sense, because it helps. It can be a different doorway for someone to unlock, because we have so many different ways to the way we learn, listen, accept communication. So all the different ways it helps the person be more accessible. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly, yes. And especially in group sessions and recorded sessions, it's important to tune on all at the beginning, it's very important to tune into all the different buttons that we have at hand's reach. Like what can be the frequency, when can be the language, because some people would be would react more to visual clues, and some would be more tuned to like audio clues. It's like you really have to, some would be very rational, so you want to reassure them, so that they can relax, and some would be very creative. So you want to tap into all these different ways at the beginning. Everybody's there. After 50 minutes, they're all super, super high, and then you can start to work.
That makes total sense. So, or when we use that NLP work to dive deeper and open that doorway, can we use simple, okay, let's say someone has had a session with you, but maybe they've done a couple sessions. Did you send them one, I don't know, homework, quote unquote? Are there simple exercises of breathing that they use that at home to integrate deeper the breathwork process?
Yes, absolutely. Journaling is always a good idea. So at the end of the session, any idea or things or thoughts that you had, just write them down. It's always good to even come back to it later on. It's great. You might also feel a little bit ungrounded, like a bit out of your depth, or I don't know, because maybe you saw something big, or maybe you just went so high, it can take some time to go back to earth. That's a situation where maybe you would want to just walk bare feet, do some yoga, like very gentle things, just to reconnect with your body, because or like ice exposure as well is an excellent way to just go back to your senses when you're feeling grounded. So that's maybe something that I hear, maybe not half of the time, but like almost, it's like afterwards you can feel a little bit ungrounded for like can be a day. So yes, that's why the integration of 1 week afterwards is important. You want to give yourself a window where you just take it easy and you listen to your body and whatever feels right. So that's one thing with the breath work. The Kundalini is very different. So you can tell us, you can feel ungrounded as well a couple of days afterwards. But I think that because it connects you to your essence at the end of the day. So that's what it does. So anything that maybe you were tolerating before, at the end, like it just bounces. You don't want to deal with it anymore. It can be in your surroundings. For instance, when I started doing it, I just could not tolerate negative people around me. I would never see them again. It was like, that's it. I'm done with it.
Done with you.
I'm losing my time. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But also like food. Some food just didn't feel like meat and fish. Oh, suddenly like I just wouldn't really eat by pleasure. If it was on the table and there was just that, of course I would have it. But I just felt a little bit repelled by that, or processed food or sugar. Like it just didn't align anymore. What Kundalini does is just align you with who you are and what feels right for you. And when you do it, the clarity comes from the fact that you're naturally repelled by certain things.
Yes, that totally makes sense. And when the integration part is so important, and I think we're tapping into a deeper aspect of ourselves instead of just like cutting ourselves off, right? It's okay, I can dive deeper with this integration process. And because we're just like, you're raw, it's like you have this wound that you like opened up, right? You want, okay, so how can I help with that continued healing process? Maybe I need to open it a little bit more. Maybe I need to dive deeper. Maybe I need to open up the volume of my listening and be more receptive. And I think, yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there about giving our body time and space after a healing session, and even any type of healing, but with the transformational breathwork, it sounds like it's a huge piece of that integration process. And if someone is
No, I was saying that initially I didn't appreciate because personally I didn't need that much integration afterwards because I didn't have massive traumas, etc. But it's by working doing that training, because when I do this training afterwards, you need to practice on 20 people before being able to do it on like for professional mode.
Right.
Just during these 20 sessions that I did on people around me, people that I knew, people that I didn't know, it was incredible, the variety of things that people were just pulling out. And I was looking at people in a different way, thinking, gosh, like you carry all that stuff every day on your shoulder. And I had no idea, person from the outside, but the stuff that you carry is just like heavy. And it's really something I didn't appreciate, because when doing my trainings, they were focusing so much on integration. I did not realize, because I personally was fine, that most people actually do need time to just take it easy afterwards, or maybe do it in conjunction with like normal therapy, like just talking therapy afterwards, like having both it's very complementary.
Yes. And like you mentioned, people are different in the way that they integrate. And maybe it could be that someone is even suppressing their ability of awareness about how the time they need, like, oh, maybe they're a really busy person. Like, oh, I don't need to integrate. I'll be fine. Or it's a person that
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's so right. It's so easy to know, like the session is finished, boom, I'm going to pick up my phone and go back to my life. If you do that, you're like ruining like half of the job you've just done. So maybe just be on your own for an hour, or meditate, or just sit on it for a little bit, but don't go back straight away to your normal life.
Breathe, relax, integrate. Yes. So if someone is in a place of wanting to try transformational breath work, but really not kind of like where to start, if they're unsure, what's kind of first doorway? Connecting with you, or do you have things on your website? What's kind of like the way that someone can start exploring before they're diving deep into it? Because it sounds like it's an intense process.
Yeah, it's not going to be like, not everybody. For instance, I personally, once again, didn't have massive traumas to release yet. Sometimes I would be crying for no, like, just because it feels like a release. When there was something somewhere, I wasn't aware of it. Try, boom, come back, and you're feeling new again. But if someone wants to try, I'm going to offer to your listeners a free 1-hour session. So I will give you the link, and you can put it on your podcast page, and then they can just have a look at it. And if they feel that it's something that they want to try, more than welcome. There is also like an introduction. I've talked about it a little bit. There is like a proper introduction, so that you know what to expect, why we do it, and there are no surprises, and you're going to be absolutely safe. There are some contraindications as well. So if people are pregnant, or have severe asthma, or cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, basically there is a bunch of psychosis or schizophrenia, I would not recommend for you to do it. Actually, I would say, better not. You don't want to. Yes, I don't think it's worth it. But however, for anyone else, it's great. So I think it's really something to experience once. See if they like it, wonderful, and they will continue. And if they don't, it's still a good experience to have in the life, like something new every day.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll make sure we put that link in the show notes, and that is for a introductory breathwork session, correct?
Yeah. It's 1 hour.
Okay,
and
great.
I recommend for them to just do it. Don't do it maybe in the middle of the day where you need to work afterwards.
When you're relaxing. Yeah.
Do it like after dinner. Just wait a couple of hours after dinner. Just put your headphones, because it's really to be listened to with headphones, not just a speaker. It's really immersive when you have headphones. And then just do it like that, and then fall asleep afterwards if you want to. It's because the end is really a nice meditation. Most people, if I don't wake them up, they would just stay asleep.
Okay, that's great. That really helps the listeners to understand as a way to move forward, right? Okay, what is the breathwork session going to look like, so that they can be able to prep themselves? Which is great. Yeah. If you're not familiar with breathwork, I think because it can be a scary place, not when we're stepping into something new, right? Fear allows us to expand because our body and the sympathetic nervous system creates that armor, like, oh my gosh, I need to be safe. I don't want to try something new. But like you said, trying something new every day, it helps us to break out of the pattern and experience something new, manifest things, bring in abundance, all of the pieces that when we're stuck in our same old box. Boring, right? It's just like, you need to break out, try something new.
Oh my God, yes. Everybody should do that.
Yeah.
It changes your life, because when you're out of your comfort zone on a regular basis, the world is not scary anymore. It's just not.
Yeah.
Just know.
Yes, exactly. You just know that you're on that right path of uncomfortability. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's scary at the beginning. Then when you get used to it somehow, because you never get used to it. So next week I'm facing one of my biggest fears, which is snake. And I'm going
Oh,
to have a the snake thinking, okay, let's try to push it a little bit further and see how far we can go. And I would really encourage everybody to just take even one step at a time, just trying something new. It doesn't need to be something scary, but just read a new magazine, like go change road to go to school, or like little steps.
yes, yeah, it is so good for your brain too, for the change, the
Mm.
repatterning. Like you said, to go a different route or make your brush your teeth with the other hand. There's so many different things we can do to help our brainwave
Yeah.
patterns to have a different connection with our neural pathways. It really helps us to expand, and so that our body is. We want to have new things. We want to experience new things, and it helps us to grow. Right? Otherwise, why did we come to this planet?
Ask people, really ask, and if they're really honest, I don't really know the number of people who would actually really embody that, Okay, but yeah, you know what? I think it needs to be a conscious decision that one day you wake up and you say, you know what, from that day on, every day, that's going to be my religion. I'm going to do something new. And if it becomes part of your life, every day you learn something new. Like you don't need to do something new, you can just learn whatever. And it's a very easy 5 minutes things that changes so much.
Yes, Aurora, that's so true. And as we're wrapping up today, I have a couple things. Let's talk about how people can find you on your website and where they can follow you on Instagram or so other social media.
Yes, so I'm relaunching next week. So I think I will give you everything on your by email, and then you will
Okay.
have all the details.
Okay, that sounds great.
Because the truth is that I still don't have a name. I've got everything set up, but I'm just not sure on the name. So I'm still sleeping on it. I'm going to do a breathwork tomorrow to get the popping answer.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Well, we can't wait to see what that ends up to be. But is your Instagram going to stay the same? That's the Aurora Breeze, right? Is that going to stay the same?
It could change, but
Okay.
yes, it could change, I think, yeah.
Okay, we'll just post everything then in the show notes. So, listeners,
Yes, and I will.
don't worry, it'll be in the show notes if we're not talking about it now. And so, one last question, Aurora, as we're finishing up: if you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to make the biggest impact on the planet?
Wow, if I had a limited budget. Well, I think that two things come to mind. One is education, obviously. That's what most people want to say, I'm sure. Zero one is just like, yeah, it's true. We can work on different levels if you educate people, and if the way of learning at school was changed when it was accessible to absolutely everybody, and you learn like the math and all of that, but also you learn about all the other stuff that we're learning about, like all the things that you cover on your podcast, like meditation, well-being, like all of these things. What planet would come out in 50 years? It would be so different. Obviously, as well, like curing diseases and all of that. That's stopping hunger, obviously. But in terms of impact, I think it really starts with education, but broad, touching everybody.
Yeah, education is such a big piece. I think that we're going to see a huge shift in education over the next 10 years because people want to be expanding their mind in a different way, like really like not only as adults but our children growing up, right? Like we want them to see a different type of education that's much more in tune with them, right? Not just so cookie cutter, where it allows them to really embrace their little individual selves. And some schools are like that, but we need it much more broad and expansive, I think.
True. But I think it's really coming because with just with the internet, like the amount of stuff that you can get, it's really, if you do have internet, like you've got everything. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I said, if the kids don't go to university, it's really not the end of the world. Like, as long as they know how to count, how to read, and they're smart and they have some grit, it will be absolutely fine. Like all the stuff, everything is learnable. I've changed careers 3 times, and I'm not the only one. Like many people do it now, and it's maybe not a good way to just absolutely put yourself in a box of that's the only thing you can do. I think if you come out and you say, you know what, I can learn anything at any point, and I can do anything afterwards and just turn it into something tangible.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Yeah, the ability for people to understand that they can have anything, and like you said, change their thought process and change their career, whatever they want to do, whatever makes them happy. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Aurora, so much for joining in today and talking about transformational breathwork. I loved our conversation.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening. Bye.
You too.